Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. A special shout out to you if you joined me during the first Pistons broadcast that we did. But this one's obviously a little bit different. It's about that game that you guys just watched with the Michigan Wolverines taking the absolute hammer down to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I'm sure it's exciting for a couple reasons for Michigan fans. Is especially if you're one of those that defend Jim Harbaugh, he kind of knocked out a whole lot of birds with one stone. He got a win against a top 10 team. Um, and he was able to be a rival to, the most kind of narrative-ish knocks on him, if you will. And Michigan looked absolutely great doing it. It was probably their best performance in Jim Harbaugh's entire tenure here as coach. Dwayne Stein, go blue, huge blowout win. Yes, a huge, huge blowout win. And I don't know if you can, I don't even know if that does it justice calling it a huge blowout. But, you liked a lot of what you saw from Michigan. They obviously came in knowing the weather with the game plan to run the ball. Our running game was strong and kept us in the game along with our defense. Absolutely, Derek. The running game and the offensive line is really just kind of where Michigan ran away with the game. Michigan ran for over 300 yards in the game. Everybody except for, let's see here, Christian Turner and Ben Van Sumeren, excuse me. But Haskins, Charbonnet, True Wilson, and Shea all had a run of over 20 yards, and that just really goes to show you not only how talented these guys are individually, but how much how well that offensive line played today. They absolutely mauled Notre Dame's defensive line, who was a pretty good defensive line, really by any accountable measure. Coming into today, and Michigan was able to just have their way with them. They only threw 14 passes. Their first, let's say, 33 plays, they had 30 runs and 3 passes. So they knew, obviously with the weather, they weren't going to be able to pass the ball a ton, but they still passed the ball pretty effectively. They had 134 yards on only the 14 passes and threw for 3 touchdowns as well. Just another example of Notre Dame being a fraud. There's definitely a little bit to that. I don't want to go ahead and put all the onus on Notre Dame, though. This was a fantastic showing for Michigan. So even if Notre Dame wasn't, the 8th best team in the country, like they were ranked coming in, it's still a pretty good football team. And I think it's not fair to Michigan to the players, to the coaching staff, to go in and just say, they were able to do this because Notre Dame was so bad. I think part of their performance against Iowa, kind of on the flip side of that, was because Iowa is just not really a good football team. I do still think Notre Dame's a good football team, and this should definitely have more credit placed on Michigan's end of it than you're just going to sit here and say, oh well, Notre Dame sucks or anything like that. One of the other things that Michigan was able to do, on it was as dominant as they were on the offensive line, they were that dominant on the defensive line as well. So you really just look at some of the rushing numbers that they had. Right, I already mentioned Michigan rushed for over 303 yards on 57 carries. It's over 5 yards a pop. Notre Dame, really the exact opposite of that. They rushed the ball 31 times for only 47 yards. It's 1.5 yards per carry. And going into this game, you could probably guess whichever team threw the ball more was either going to be behind or they were going to have way less success, giving the monsoon that they were playing in. And Notre Dame threw the ball twice as many times as Michigan. And even the 14 points that Notre Dame put up really doesn't do justice to how dominant the game was. I know it was a 31-point win, but today Michigan was even more than 31 points better than Notre Dame was. How good would McCaffrey be had he played last year in this? I think Michigan would be in a better spot if McCaffrey had played last year and then being played this year. So that's kind of that. How good would he be? I mean, he already shows that he's pretty good when he gets to play. He had the hit against Wisconsin that took him out, but he's shown to be pretty good. He would definitely be better if he had all of that playing experience, though. And I think Michigan would be a better team for it if McCaffrey was able to get the starts last year and obviously get the starts this year. He would no doubt no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure no doubt in any of the fans' minds either, that he would be better than what Shea Patterson is right now. Notre Dame's starting quarterback was scared. He had shot several open receivers downfield that didn't notice from our D. Yeah, I made the joke in our messenger that he was starting to look like Ian Shook instead of Ian Book. But yeah, he was not ready for. It didn't look like him or the coaching staff or any of the other players were ready for kind of the intensity that Michigan was going to bring. I think they threw Notre Dame off of their game plan early, and Notre Dame, there was probably a lot of confidence issues. They were down 17. It was a 17-0 going into halftime, and then the second half, it just kind of poured on. But even in the first half, you saw Notre Dame have some drops. They had some drops in the second half too on some plays that could have been pretty big. It wouldn't have really made a difference in the outcome of the game, I don't think. But especially starting the game, they had the fumble on the kick that they thought they blocked. That's probably a huge, kind of mind bender for a team where you think you got this awesome block kick and then you have really good field position and then your guy ends up muffing it. Michigan falls on top of it and then they get the ball back when you just stop them. So I think there was a lot of things, kind of going for Notre Dame that drained them mentally pretty early on, and then from there on, Michigan was just kind of able to, really feast on them. But yeah, Ian Book didn't play a good game at all. The big key was going for kill shots early in the weather. Notre Dame was scared of the weather, and Michigan let the weather become an advantage rather than a problem. Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's kill shots were, obviously mostly on the ground, and they came from the offensive line. Like, they didn't pass a lot to start the game. There's a point where they had, I think, 18 consecutive runs. I know it was 17, and then Shea went out for a pass, but he ended up scrambling and getting a few yards out of it. So Michigan's game plan early was, we're going to go ahead and pound the rock, and we're just going to see if they can stop them. And then it became pretty clear that Notre Dame wasn't going to be able to stop Michigan from running the football. So Michigan just kept going to that. And then to your point, they were able to, play or put the weather into their advantage by passing the ball when necessary, but also by getting up early. They got up 17-0 pretty quick in the game. And when you're playing in weather like that and you're already down 17 points, that means that you can't go ahead and only get, field goals. And not that field goals are easy anyway when you're playing in weather like that. But now you have to move the ball downfield. And obviously your passing game is not going to be as effective unless you're Penn State playing against Michigan State today. Then I guess your passing game will be a little bit more effective in the right. But Notre Dame's passing game wasn't going to be as effective playing in the weather that they're playing in. And when they got down in a huge hole, that's more than what a typical 17-point deficit is, if that makes sense. Defense looked improved, and Notre Dame is not that good. Yeah, the defensive line looked really good. Like I said, Michigan held Notre Dame to only a yard and a half per carry. I'll see if I can get some sack numbers here. But I mean, the coverage was good as well. Ian Book, when there's a reason quarterbacks get scared. They don't just get scared because they're hiking the ball. They're getting scared because defenders are constantly in their face. They're getting scared because they can't find any open receivers, and they're getting scared because they don't trust their offensive line to go ahead and protect them long enough for them to do really just kind of anything about it. Who else? Michigan receiving. Yeah, I mean, it's really a story of the run game for Michigan, as we mentioned. But I mean, other than that, obviously a great day for Michigan on the ground. A great day for Jim Harbaugh and his entire coaching staff. Definitely, in my opinion, and probably you'll hear a lot of this tomorrow, Monday, just throughout next week. It was Harbaugh's best win at Michigan, and then just the best game that they've played in general, kind of under his tenure. And hopefully for them, things can kind of start coming together. They'll need they're not mathematically out of like the Big Ten race, but they'll need some help for that, especially with Ohio State beating Wisconsin again today. We're about to bask in my rightness on Tuesday. There's Dylan Bear with the Sports Carnage podcast. So on Tuesday, we will definitely be discussing what just took place on the field and the giant can of whoop ass that Michigan was able to go ahead and lay down on Notre Dame. And if you guys want to hear what Dylan said on the podcast on Thursday leading up into the game, you can go hear that on Sports Carnage in the status above this little Facebook Live thing. We have the link to our Facebook. You can find it there. You can find it on iTunes. Just type in Sports Carnage Podcast, Podbean. Or if you're like me and you don't want to remember all these websites, the super easiest thing to do is open up a new tab right now on your computer. Type in Google, unless Google's your homepage like it is for me. And then in the Google search bar, just type in Sports Carnage. You don't even have to type in podcast. Just type in Sports Carnage. The first like 5 links that pop up will be all us. So you guys can find any of us from there. But I'm not going to spoil what Dylan said for you, but he was very, very right on this game specifically. And I mentioned this on the Pistons one, but if you weren't listening, it's also Paul Rashawn's birthday today. And Paul is part of our Sports Carnage crew as well, and the lone Michigan fan, if you will, on our podcast. So it was pretty happy birthday to himself. Matthew Morso surprised me. It surprised me too. It's not a game I thought Michigan was going to win coming in, but pretty early on they imposed their will and they showed you that they were the better team. But don't expect to hear from him the first hour. Yeah, Dylan was MIA last week, but he never passes up a chance to tell you how right he was. So we'll probably even start earlier and get the podcast out on like Wednesday for you. The defense was amazing. The defense was fun to watch again. Yeah, the defense was really fun to watch. You're able to see them swarm to the ball. You're able to see them be good in coverage as well. And one thing that I like seeing from any team in Michigan tonight, and it's a point that that Paul made in our Detroit Sports Nation group chat and our Sports Carnage group chat, is that Michigan kept their foot on the gas. They didn't really give Notre Dame any breathing room. Even the touchdown Notre Dame got at the end, it wasn't because Michigan was letting up. It was just a good kind of contested catch there at the end that gave Notre Dame their 13th and 14th point following the extra point. But it was definitely a pour it on game. I don't think Harbaugh was trying to send like a message or anything like that. Not to Notre Dame specifically. He's probably pissed about people talking all this crap about his program. Throughout the entire season, really, ever since the close Army game, the Wisconsin loss, Penn State loss. He's kind of been under the microscope, and that's not just this year. But this definitely has to feel good for them, and they're happy that they didn't let their foot off the gas like say they did even in the third quarter against Illinois when they scored, was it like 25 points to make it 28-0 to 28-25, and after that Michigan kind of put their foot on the gas again in that game. But that was, besides just obviously the offensive line, which is what impressed me most about this game, the other most impressive part was that they did keep at it. And it's probably very easy in a game like this. I know it's Notre Dame and it's a rivalry game, so that probably makes a difference. But knowing that when you have a lead and it's like it was 17-7, but then it got to like 38-7, knowing that when you have a 38-7 lead or like a 31-7 lead, and it's bigger than a traditional lead because of the weather and because the other team just kind of by default isn't going to be able to move the ball, and what they're going to do when they run it, so they have to pass and it's just not going to work, it's probably easier to take your foot off the gas because there's no way that the other team is going to end up, there's no way that they can score enough points to catch up with you. But that is definitely not the attitude that Michigan had tonight, which was pretty refreshing to see. And obviously, you hope they can just carry it over into next week when they're at Maryland, and then they have a bye week before they host Michigan State, and they go to Indiana, and then they finish the season off at home against the Buckeyes. And obviously, a lot can happen between now and then. They're going to need a little bit of help if they kind of want hopes to see themselves in Indianapolis. Let's see here. So really what they have to hope for is that Penn State can find a way to beat Ohio State. And it's be tougher because it's in Columbus. But if Penn State is able to beat Ohio State the week before Ohio State visits Ann Arbor. Then, Penn State will have one loss going into, I'm sorry, Penn State. Ohio State will have one loss going into it. And, and Michigan will have two losses, but they will be able to get the head-to-head. And Penn State, because they beat Michigan as well. Let me go ahead and check out their schedule and see kind of what could help them. So Penn State goes at Minnesota next week, against Indiana, and then at the end against Rutgers. So it's a pretty tough road, given that Penn State has to lose two games as well, and you don't have a chance to make you don't have a chance to kind of add to your win and being one of those games. They could lose. Like I said, a lot could happen. They need a lot of help though. But if you this could be, and I'm not saying it obviously be like Harbaugh's last year or anything like that, but this season could kind of be akin to maybe Lloyd's last season, when it didn't start particularly how Michigan wanted, but they were able to go ahead and finish off the season very strong, winning a bunch of games and then winning their bowl game. So I think something like that would be bigger for this Michigan team than it would for other teams who maybe in the preseason had hopes for a conference title or a playoff berth or something like that, and they didn't get that accomplished. But I think if this Michigan team is able to rattle that off, you can definitely kind of see where the turning point happened in the season. Now Notre Dame for sure going to cancel the series in 14 years. Yeah, they just re-upped for 2033 and 34. It's ridiculous that the schedule games so far out. And Notre Dame canceled. No, Michigan canceled. Was it UCLA in I think 2022 and 23, and there was kind of some talks that or just some rumors, not some talks. It makes it sound way more official than it was, but there are some rumors floating around on the internet that Michigan was going to add Notre Dame to their schedule instead of UCLA. But then you looked at Notre Dame's schedules those years, and they still play USC, and they're playing Clemson and Ohio State both of those years, I think. So for Notre Dame, it really wouldn't make sense to take that game, but they might go ahead and bitch out like they did against, was it after the first time, what's his face? Brian Kelly lost to him. And that could be a nice college football tradition, except we don't get these two teams to play every year. But Brian Kelly, mad face, losing to Michigan. Because I'm sure you can still find a meme of Brian Kelly's face when they lost that night game to Denard. And that Michigan team, in that kind of crazy game. And obviously tonight's game a little bit less crazy, but probably no less hype for Michigan fans. And shout out to the Big House crowd too, because they were there for that entire beatdown. You saw it on TV, and it didn't really look like people were filing out early or there were any empty seats. They kind of relished and they embraced the weather. They embraced everything that was going to come with that day, and that's. I'm not saying that's obviously what fueled Michigan to victory, but it's probably really nice, for a player and you're up 31-7 to still see your fans are there going crazy for you, and you want to go ahead and put them on, you want to go ahead and kind of put them on. What am I trying to say? You want to go ahead and you want to put on a show for them. Excuse me, but just put on the show for the fans who still sit there and still support you, even when it's probably makes way more sense for them to go home and catch the rest of the game on the radio because you guys are up so much. Unlike Spartan Stadium. Yeah, I was at Spartan Stadium today, and I was guilty of that. I left. But they're down. It was after the third touchdown and then the 2-point conversion. They were down 21-0 before halftime. And the offense wasn't doing anything, and I left. So I was a bad fan today in that regard. But I went there. I wanted to tough it out. But they didn't give you anything to tough out for. And I listened to the game on the radio on the way back home, and it didn't sound like it got any better at all. There were actually more interceptions. Little brother is next. Actually, who's next? Is it Minnesota you guys have next? Or Minnesota, Michigan has next? So they don't quite play Michigan State next. I just had the schedule. Hold on. I'm sitting here trying to click through a couple different things, so bear with me. Maryland. So they're at Maryland next. And then they have a bye, and then they have Michigan State. But now it's not looking like that's going to be a very fun game for for Michigan State. Michigan's rolling, and Michigan State is not rolling. Michigan lost last week, but they looked way better in the second half, and then they played. And then obviously they had the showing today. You would expect them to beat Maryland, and Michigan State has lost 3 straight. So by the time they meet, it'll be upward trajectory against. Don't sleep on the Indiana game before Ohio. Yeah, that Indiana game. If they do end up looking ahead, it's something that could get them into trouble. But by that time, Michigan will have, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At that point, Michigan will probably have 8 wins. And, I think probably at the beginning of every year, most teams, unless you're like Alabama where 10 wins is a failure, most teams want to hit like that 10-win threshold. So if they're at 8 wins and they beat Maryland and Michigan State, by the time they're going into Indiana, especially since it's a road game, I don't expect them to be looking ahead to Ohio State because they're going to want to hit that 10-win mark, and even at that point, they'll have a chance to hit 11 wins with the bowl game. Minnesota's undefeated, so I don't know about that. So I don't know about yeah, Minnesota's and PJ Fleck out there rowing the boat. Maybe Michigan State's the next head coach. I don't know who they play. You don't know who Minnesota plays, or you know who Michigan plays. I just told you who Michigan plays. Michigan plays Maryland. But Ohio State, or who? Penn State has to play Maryland, I believe. And that is a game where, that's where it gets tricky. So Penn State has to play Maryland, or they have to play Minnesota. And that's a game that they could drop. And then they have to play Indiana and Rutgers. Rutgers is an automatic win. And if Indiana is able to help you out and beat Penn State, and then Penn State is able to beat Ohio State, that end of the year, Penn State, so Ohio State and Michigan would be playing. So if they would each have 2 losses, I'm trying to work this out with you guys. If they each have 2 losses, I know it hurts you to lose to a team in the other division. So I do believe Indiana's in the East. So in that instance, Penn State might go. I don't know. I'll have that figured out for you guys on Sports Carnage. I don't want to try and do that right now and rack my brain and just look stupid in front of all you guys live. I'd rather be able to plan it out. But that'd be a fun little 2-loss scenario for each team, and then you just kind of see who goes where. Minnesota won the last 4 games by at least 23 points, straight ripping it. There we go. Dylan's got all the stats on hand. That's why we're such a great podcast. We bring you the straight cold facts. And if you guys don't know, again, that's the Sports Carnage podcast. Just type it into Google. You can find us iTunes, Podbean, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube now, wherever you want. But if you just type us into Google, click on those links, it'll take you where you want to go. It's how you search for everything anyway. But Sports Carnage on Google, or if you want to make it easy, you can just click this little this link that we have here in the caption for you. About how about the Wolverines join Ryan from Boom Sports Carnage Podcast. There's a reason that's lit up blue. Go click it, follow it, subscribe, comment, like, rate, review, whatever you guys want to do. But we will be here next for and then you guys can always see us doing live reactions, whether it be Pistons games, Lions games, Michigan State. Didn't get a Michigan State one today, but it's something that we're going to try and put out for you guys just as the weeks continue, and kind of give you guys our thoughts on the state of whatever team we're discussing. We're going to be going live after the Lions game tomorrow, after their game against the Giants as well. So that's the next time you can see us in this capacity. But every Thursday, our Sports Carnage drops. So go subscribe to it. Like I said, rate it, review it, follow it, I think is how you guys get the notifications for when we drop. And then you can, boom, just listen, car, radio, gym, whatever you want to do. But that's where you can find us there. And like I said, we'll be live after pretty much any events. We've done a couple Piston games already. We did the Quandre Diggs trade. We did the Lions game against the Vikings, which I think was our first one. And they seem to be, you guys seem to like them. And if you don't, I guess you just stop tuning in. I think the weather helped us early and Notre Dame couldn't recover. I think it probably helped on the fumble because it's kind of that of a wet ball. But I think really where the weather helped you guys out and gave you your biggest advantage was after Michigan was able to help themselves by getting out to that 17-0 lead. And I mentioned it earlier, 17-0 in in perfect conditions is a way more manageable deficit than 17-0 in the weather. So in that aspect, because Michigan was able to make their own luck essentially, and you just really just make your own good situation. You dominate early, and then you get the benefit. It's no longer the weather's an even playing field. You're able to get the benefit of the weather for you because the other team has to make more plays than the weather now because you started off so hot. And that was like I said, and even when it was 17-0, I made the point to our message. If Notre Dame wants to score or if they want to get close back in this game, they're going to have to do it probably on defense, because at the point their offense wasn't doing anything and their offense wasn't able to muster up anything throughout the rest of the day. But that's pretty much what we have for you guys tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's late. You want to get some sleep, and you want to be excited for the Lions win tomorrow. So when they're at 3-1, we can all hop back on the bandwagon. But again, join us on Sports Carnage every Thursday. We'll be bringing you another live reaction tomorrow to the Lions. The game will probably end around 4:25-ish. So that's probably what time you can catch us here, 4:25, 4:30. But you might get a Facebook notification anyway. I know I do on my phone whenever one of my friends or whenever one of the pages go live. So that's really what we have for you tonight, and I'm glad you guys were able to sit here with me. Great win for you if you are a Michigan fan, and I'm sure I'll give you a lot of fun stuff to talk about on Monday, especially if the Lions are able to pull it out tonight. But thank you guys, and have a great night.